So for a lot of the times for AF, we focus a lot on advertising and marketing and not necessarily the public relations side of things. So today we thought we'd mix things up. PR is a powerful discipline that helps amplify marketing efforts in creative and newsworthy ways, all in an effort to keep your brand top of mind. When PR and marketing work together, it can help unify your brand message and create comprehensive communication strategies. Today, we welcome Samantha Flynn, owner of Juniper Public Relations. Samantha is calling in from Chicago, Illinois, and we are very thankful to have her speak with us today about amplifying your marketing efforts with PR. If you have any questions, please hold them to the end. You can put them in the chat as they come up, and then we'll save them all to the end, and then Kaylin and I will kind of feed them over to Sam. So please put them in the chat if you have any questions. Sam, thank you so much for being here today. I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for the introduction. And I'm so excited to be here. We have a balmy 68 degrees here in Chicago today. So it's exciting for us. I think it was 32 a couple days ago. So we'll take, it's not Hawaii, but we'll take it, right? I'm so excited to jump in. Everybody can see my screen. It's all working. Perfect. Okay. I'm really excited to be here and talk to AAF Hawaii about the public relations discipline and how to work with PR to really amplify your marketing efforts. It's always great when I get to be able to dig in and kind of talk about the state of PR and how it can help and educate. So I appreciate the time today. A little bit about me. As Lindsay said, I'm Samantha Flynn. I've been working in public relations for about 15 years now. And I have a Master's of Science in Public Relations from Syracuse University. And I've worked in agency setting for the majority of my career. I had a stint in-house at the Hershey Company when I was first starting, but I like the thrill and the speed of agency life, which I'm sure a lot of you do as well. I've worked across the board from CPG, B2B, global clients, a lot of nonprofits, grass-fed and finished beef, pampered chefs. So I did that for about 10 years. And then 5 years ago, I started Juniper Public Relations. So we are a PR-led strategic communications firm that's based in Chicago and Philadelphia. And some of our clients are listed here. I'm really excited again to talk to you guys today because I did work in an advertising agency leading the PR discipline and the PR department for 7 years. So I absolutely understand the importance of strong integrated campaigns and the roles that various advertising disciplines play in success for clients. So I always love to kind of talk about an integrated approach. As Lindsay said, any questions that you have, feel free to throw them in the chat. This is your session and your time today. So happy to answer any questions that I can to the best of my ability towards the end. If anything's super urgent, feel free to raise your hand and you can jump in at any point in time. So a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with a baseline definition of what is PR. I know that there are various career levels here, people that are really familiar with the discipline. I think at the end of the day, PR is a very ambiguous term and people really use it interchangeably with different definitions. So I think it's worth regrounding on what our definition of PR is. We're going to talk a little bit about the state of media and some PR fundamentals, some best practices on how to partner effectively with a PR agency, a few case studies that show that, and then of course some time for a Q&A at the end. Is anyone want to jump in or brave enough for their definition of what PR is? And if not, that is okay. There are a variety of different definitions. I think I saw a PR firm jump on, so they probably know pretty well. But for the purpose of this conversation and how Juniper defines PR, is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and its publics. And we really do that by managing, and managing is the big part of it, and disseminating information to help build and sway perceptions. So I think what's interesting about PR in advertising, a little bit different from some of the other disciplines, is there's another person that's involved here in between the organization and the consumer, and that is the media, right? That is the reporter. And so it's our job from a PR perspective to make news and pitch a reporter. Again, there are a lot of other things that PR can cover, but I think for the context of what we'll really be talking about today, is to make something newsworthy and interesting for a reporter, right? And be able to convey your key messages in a way that that reporter can then tell that story to their audience. It's that third party that's in the middle here that makes PR really kind of specialized and a little bit different from all of the various communications channels where you're really able to go directly to your consumer or your end user. PR can manifest in a variety of different ways. I kind of just hit over on the media relations side. We have proactive media relations where we create news and we reach out and try to get our clients in the news. Lots of celebrity influencer programs. So you'll see Jennifer Aniston is now the creative director of Vital Proteins, right? That is an example of a celebrity influencer program. There are ways that we can help support trade show support, whereas we get media lists that are registered at trade shows and try to set up meetings with our clients that are there. So media relations is a big bulk of what we do, but we also do a lot of work with brand reputation. So we think from a PR perspective, what is going to help to create connections and make stronger relationships and perceptions with your public. So a lot of times we spend time developing corporate social responsibility programs, identifying charitable partners, working through the communications aspect of that. Crisis communication, I always say crisis, you have to have an iron stomach to do crisis, and you're never, crisis, I'm like laughing, I'm like nervous right now even talking about it because I don't want to jinx myself. But essentially, if something's happening, there's some sort of scandal with an executive, there's a recall of your food product, you have bed bugs at your hotel. PR is very, very essential in managing crisis communication. We also do thought leadership awards bureau, always just kind of thinking through the 360 degree of how can we help to elevate not just the brand, but the people that are also within an organization to really help fortify a reputation. And then, of course, we help with communications growth planning. So we're looking always at what is the media covering? What are the competitors doing? We can help with the interagency team brand positioning, analytics and reporting. And then also, I think the big thing is internal communications that falls down here. Your internal, your employees are an audience as well. And so we really look at how do we communicate growth, scale, shifts, and change within the communications growth planning. So again, this is not by any means a comprehensive or an exhaustive list of what a PR professional or PR agency can help you with, but it is a good overview of just the breadth and the variety of how a PR partner can benefit an organization. Okay. So where does PR fit? Now, I know that there are much more advanced marketing funnels than this, right? We're not talking about loyalty, retargeting, remarketing, any of that. But I do like to do a base level, lowest common denominator marketing funnel to just really talk about where PR fits. And so I like to say PR is a funnel filler. It fits very, very firmly in the awareness category. It's similar to a billboard, I would say, or any of your out-of-home advertising that you guys are working with. And I think that that's really important as we're setting the stage for the conversation today, because the Achilles heel of the PR industry is that it's very challenging to measure efforts against it. And because of that, we find that PR is usually one of the first disciplines that is cut when budgets are tight, and usually the last one that is greenlit as a whole, because it is challenging to measure. We know if you have digital ads going, you have click-through rates, you have conversions, you have the windows of purchase, you can see viewership on television. From a PR perspective, it is very challenging to tie reading an article in the Wall Street Journal with what an end result is to the business, right? And so we compare it to an out-of-home tactic there. It can help all the way through the funnel, though, if it's integrated in with other marketing disciplines and with an interagency team. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I think what's important about PR is it's not just awareness, and you're not just talking to people that may not be aware of you. You want to continue hitting them with the messaging. And again, I think that this is pretty common across all of marketing and advertising, something that you guys are all very familiar with. But once you've talked to them and they're aware of you, how do you talk to them now that you're a customer? How do you make sure they're re-engaged? How are you helping to build loyalty? How are you growing the length of that customer journey and making sure that they're staying in the fold? So PR is awareness, but it also is retention as well. And then I will say we just like to look at a little bit of Publix. I think, I've been talking a lot about the media and our customers, but there's a variety of different audiences that we always have to think through when we're pulling together strategic communications plans, whether that's shareholders, your employees, peers in your competitive set. That's really important, I would say, especially through the thought leadership work we do, but regulatory bodies as well, if we're working in highly regulated industries, and how are the information and the press releases that we're sending out being perceived by the various regulatory bodies? Are they in favor of, the direction it's going? We're taking a look at that. Again, I mentioned our competitors, consumers, but also your vendors and your key decision makers. So really, when we're identifying audience in Publix, we always like to make sure that we're doing a 360 on anybody, not just the media or the customer, but who is hearing and seeing our message and tailoring the communications to those specific audiences where it's appropriate. Are we all tracking? I'm sure. I can't see anybody. I can just see my slides. So I will say this is the point where I get very nervous, because I'm great at communications, I would say, or like that's my bread and butter. Advertising, graphic design is not one of them. So this is a clip art slide, a couple of them. And it took me all day to do this. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. But anyway, a couple things about what makes PR unique. As I said a little bit earlier, public relations, I like to call it an art in a sea of marketing science. So again, there's really tight measurement on marketing and on various, digital efforts, television, radio, all of that, where there's a very finite, you can see the success that's working. You can A/B test creative. You can move budget pretty quickly through programmatic and really kind of index against what's working best. PR is a little bit different than that. Again, because it's so tangential, because it's ambiguous and it's hard to measure, we have strategy on what we can pull together we know what makes a good story and we know the elements that should be there, but there are a lot of things that are out of our control. And so we are relying on the ability to tell the story, but knowing that we have the lack of ultimate control. There are breaking news elements all the time that come in. So you could have a story ready to write and it's evergreen and it's ready to run. And there's a natural disaster. There's some sort of event that's creating news and it pushes everything for the future. Sometimes things get canceled. Sometimes editors decide there's just not room. It gets published it gets pushed to the next edition, or it gets pushed for 6 months from now. So I think that is a little bit different on the PR side. It's not so much straightforward as buying the ad space. Again, we talked a little bit about the two-way communication. So I think this is something that's very special about PR as well. Knowing that when there's an ad, and a lot of times consumers are able to decipher when they're viewing an ad, and that can be something that is perfectly controlled and that's delivered exactly the way in the exact right television program or streaming program. And it's the exact creative that we know is working and that's being received by the consumer. Because we have the media, or because we have the consumers and there's a feedback cycle, it's two-way communication. And so there has to be a layer and an additional thought process of how is this valuable to the end consumer and why would the media want to write about this? Sometimes we have clients that say, okay, we have a new flavor of gum and we want to write a press release. And we have to push back and say, is that really newsworthy? I understand that you can advertise that there's a new flavor of gum and you can raise awareness through your ads and through your in-shopper marketing and through your consumer promotions and so on and so forth. But if we're going out to reporters and we want them to write, is this because this is a new SKU that we think is going to be key to growing your business by a certain amount of percent? Like, is there a business story here? Does this new flavor of gum represent a new direction for the company or a return to roots for the company, right? Does it recommend wanting to reach new people? Is there some sort of consumer giveaway where people can win gum for the rest of their lives? I don't know. So we always have to take a look and understand that there's two-way communication. And with that lack of ultimate control, we can always, when we're engaging with reporters, we can ask them for questions in advance. Some will give them to us, some won't. But because it's a conversation and because it's a dialogue and it's two-way, right? It's not just that singular one. Reporters are finding the story and they know what their audience wants to hear. And They identify the story that's there. So because it's a dialogue, there's a two-way communication and a lack of ultimate control. I've talked a little bit already about being on the media's time and about PR being a little bit hard to define and harder to measure. So I think that I've kind of hit all the points on this, but in general, it's just a little bit unique. And I would say, maybe not the unicorn, but the outlier of the marketing suite. And I think a lot of times we have clients that it's challenging to understand the value, especially when you're within a suite of teams or within an interagency team that is really producing a lot of results and metrics. And I think what's interesting is that usually when PR is going really, really well, it seems effortless and it's almost invisible. And so you kind of think that you're okay to kind of cut back on it. And then when you do really need it, if there's a crisis or if there's something coming in, it's something that you notice when it's gone. So jumping into the state of media and some PR fundamentals. So again, I think I've mentioned this a little bit, but our job is to create news. So it's not just to push out what the company or the client thinks is news. It's for us to create news and make it a noteworthy story that media is going to want to tell. So that takes a lot of research on our end. We spend a lot of time studying what the media covers, the trends that are coming through. So I think a couple years ago, there was a really big burst of media interested on the consumer side on, it's National Cheeseburger Day, it's National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, it's National this, National that. There seemed to have been the kind of a groundswell on these types of consumer-facing fun holidays to participate in, right? And so we went through a slate of time where we were telling our clients, have a deal, Potbelly Sandwich Shop on National Sandwich Day, make sure that you have some sort of deal because we know that media is going to be writing roundups of the deals in the area on National Sandwich Day, and you're going to be missing out. They used to see huge increases on these days when they'd be included in the media. You could actually see the lift in the stores, which is interesting. But we are understanding, we know what the time pegs are. We know what the trends are. We look at how the media is covering things. Are they including video? Is there a shift in video asset, which is what makes a really great relationship with an advertising agency or creative partner so much more valuable, right? Is high quality assets. Now it's all video. Before, is it, certain headshots? What do we need to get the media to enable them to run the story and mention it? Again, we understand how the newsrooms work. And so we understand about shift changes on the broadcast side, for example. So if we're running a media event, we know we're going to do that at 10 in the morning because that's going to be after the morning broadcast team is off and before the noon teams have to be in the studio so they can come in and do a quick capture and cover the story to make it run for the 12 o'clock news, make it run for the 5 o'clock news and the 10 o'clock news. So we understand that. We understand the editorial process. And we write like journalists. So press releases are written in AP style. And again, apologies if this is elementary. I just like to make sure that we're covering it. But we write as journalists because some journalists, we're on a time crunch or things are going across the wire. They will publish the press release as is if it's written like a story. And so we have to know the AP style and we have to have it ready so that if there needs to be a quote that's included in a story or if there needs to be some sort of information that's shared, that they can just grab it and it's in the right format. And we advocate on our clients' behalf. So again, we manage and we provide access to information, assets, and key leaders as needed to help encourage coverage. So some things that we are seeing, and I think that is important to know from a PR perspective on the change of the media landscape. So we have a 24/7 news cycle now. I don't think that that's anything relatively new. It's basically been that way, I would say, for the past 10 or 15 years. But because of that, there's a need to fill the news. You have these 24/7 news channels. The internet obviously is always on. And so there's a lot of opportunity to provide and have your client included in various verticals, in various outlets, and in various publications, because there's a lot of content needs that need to be filled. The one thing I will say, though, is that the scrutiny for journalism is at an all-time high. I would say since about 2016 or so, there has been a lot of emphasis on media bias. And there is an inherent distrust that consumers now have for the media that maybe had not been there prior. And I think what's interesting about that fact is that there has always been the state of PR. There has always been a relationship between public relations professionals and the media. You know, I studied this when I was in college in the, around 2010. But there now seems to be a consumer or public awareness of how PR, pitching, and media works. And everybody kind of thinks they're an expert in it now. So it's very important nowadays that journalists are doing their due diligence, dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And we're seeing that come through a lot more on the PR side. That being said, there is still a separation of church and state within the journalists and when we're working with the media. So ad sales and ad copy, ad sales is one side, advertising is one side, and earned media is another side. And we really, from a PR firm, want to make sure that we're respecting that boundary as much as we can and acknowledging to the journalists that we understand that. Because of this scrutiny, there has to be a very clear line and delineation. If somebody's buying ads on MSNBC and we're pitching an MSNBC reporter, we cannot, it's our reputation as well, mention that we're buying ads to kind of sweeten the deal to try to get the media to write earned for us. There's absolutely a separation. If something comes through and it seems too branded or it seems like it's an ad, we usually then get kicked over to the advertising side of it. So I do like to say that is important. Sometimes we have clients that come through and, again, we don't have ultimate control. So we can always go back to the media and we can ask them for clarification on factual errors. But, we can't go back and say, well, I don't want that quote included, right? I didn't like that. And sometimes we have clients that come back and say, well, we're spending money with them. That's not a conversation that our team can have or really anybody should be having. But I do think it is important to kind of say there is a big separation between church and state. So while PR can really help advertising and creative agencies to tell the message, our hands do get a little bit tied on corrections and follow-up. Cancel culture is real. It's happening right now. So what I would say about that is it's just more important than ever that you're working with your PR professionals to ensure that there is no gray area on the intention of your messages, or that you have a PR person that's helping you to look through how your messages can be perceived by the variety of different audiences. Especially because we have a lot of keyboard warriors, we have a lot of trolls, we have a lot of people that kind of make it their lives to really look to try to start things. I think it's important now more than ever that there's no ambiguity on what people are saying. We also are seeing a lot of merging of media titles. So I think Vice just shut down fully here. We're seeing layoffs here in Chicago. I think WBZ, the local NPR station, is down to 1 hour of original programming a day. The rest of it's kind of your national. They're laying off the staff here. And really, that's just because the industry of journalism is changing a lot. We've moved into the digital phase. And so there are a lot of consolidations that are happening and a lot of journalists that are kind of moving into a freelance role and perspective. And so what that means is that there are fewer titles, even though it's a 24/7 news cycle, there aren't as many titles as there used to be, right? I don't know, I'm probably going to date myself, but Jane Magazine isn't around anymore. I don't think Teen Vogue is around anymore. So if you're looking at it and you're in this, you have fewer options for niche audiences, as well as you have a lot of freelance journalists. And so they're writing for multiple publications. So because of that, the competition for pitching is a lot higher. Media is relationship-based. PR is relationship-based. As I said a little bit earlier, it's about your contacts. A good story is going to be picked up whether you have a relationship with someone or not. But what I do think is interesting is that there is relationship over the years between PR people and the journalists on giving the information, granting the requests, having them come through. One thing that is also changing is the rise of an affiliate partnership. So there are entire magazine publications. I would say Hearst is a big one. But we're actually kind of seeing the rise of what's called a commerce editor. And so whereas previously PR had been fully earned, where there's no exchange of any type of money in place in exchange for a story. Now there are affiliate networks and affiliate programs that are coming forth, and it's a completely different ballgame. And that's really keeping a lot of the titles alive. So what that is we would send a pitch to, let's say, the Today Show, and we would say, hey, I have a great client for gift guides for Mother's Day. There's going to be a new, vase that you have to have. There's an element here where, and if you include the vase in the gift guides, we can kick back 10% or 20% of the sale or of the cart to the publishing house. Again, this has been a really important lifeline to keep a lot of media titles alive. And actually, I would say affiliate partnerships and being on affiliate networks is kind of table stakes right now for your consumer brands that are going through. But that is a change that we have seen, I would say, particularly over the past 5 years or so. And then finally, reactive media is more important than ever. So again, we always kind of talk about proactive media where we're creating the news and we're sending it out. Reactive media is a lot of journalists, a lot of freelancers, and so on and so forth. We're seeing a rise in requests for sourcing. So there's just as I said, an increase on, I'm working on this type of story. I'm looking for a registered dietitian that can talk about the value of, grass finished beef over, regular beef. Can someone help me out? So there has to be a dedicated, reactive, real-time response plan in place because we are seeing a shift of coverage on the reactive side much more than we have in the past. Okay. Measurement. Sorry, let me go back. So again, I say that PR is measured differently, or there's no sense of measurement or, kind of industry standard. Actually, let me rephrase that. Sorry. PR is hard to measure. And really what we look at is we look at something called impressions, right? And I'm sure all of you are familiar and aware of impressions. It's tied to an awareness goal. As I've mentioned before, your in-depth metrics are really scant for the discipline. So I think what's interesting about PR is there is no standard benchmark or consistency on measurement. Every agency will measure things differently. Case in point, if you have social media, some people will count, some agencies will count, the total number of followers on that page. Some people will take that follower count and times it by 2.5 because the assumption here is that, well, some people liked it and engaged with it, and that kicked into other people's feeds. And so other people probably saw it, right? So we kind of are always doing the best that we can to look at these different levels. But what I would say is for Juniper side, and I'll walk through this real quickly, but I think the main thing is that it's most important to just align with your client at the beginning on what and how you are measuring. And if you are taking over from a previous PR firm, it's important to understand how they measured so that you can have an idea of what the actual apples to apples comparison are when you're looking year over year. The first year that you're working with any PR client is a baseline year, and you're going to get your metrics in place. And then from there, you can kind of tweak. But we look at print publications, newspaper, magazine. We take the circulation and we multiply it depending on if it's a newspaper or magazine. Again, you account for, that magazine being in circulation. You account for doctor's offices. I was at a doctor's office a couple of weeks ago, and there was a Kevin Hart Men's Fitness from December of 2020 that was there, in the waiting room. So that definitely has gotten its lifespan. I mean, that's been 4 years. We look at pod and radio with segment listeners and, your TV segment viewers. For websites, we tend to look at the unique visitors a month. If it's a large website like Yahoo or Forbes, we'll take their monthly number, 90 million impressions, let's say, and we'll divide it by 30. because our belief is that it's probably on the front page of the website, and, a massive website like that, for one day, let's say. So we divide it by 30. Just because honestly, we know better than to walk into a client and say, hey, we got you 2 billion impressions. Isn't that wonderful? And have them come back and say, okay, but my sales are down. My rooms aren't booked. What is the value of an impression, right? So we tend to underreport, I think, here from the Juniper side. But again, I don't know that there's any right or any wrong way to measure. It's just important that you're transparent about the measurement. And then we look at, CPM, ad value, which you guys are obviously familiar with. I'm actually curious to see if this is a good on ad value. Maybe you guys can help me with that at the end of this. We can kind of talk about it. But then we have some of these other metrics, but we also look at, what are the number of placements? How many of our key messages made it? Was the name of the brand in the headline? Did the media include the asset that we provided? How many interviews? So again, we try to mix it up with some of these hard and soft metrics. Okay, now we're going to get into the fun stuff. Thank you for bearing with me. Just a couple of slides here on how to partner with PR to help amplify your marketing efforts. So the main thing I would say, and I say this all the time, is that PR dies on the vine if it's not adequately supported by the marketing funnel and the wider interagency team. As I said before, I worked in an integrated advertising agency for 7 years. And prior to that, I had been at solely a PR agency. And I just saw such value in being a part of an integrated agency because, there's not competition for budget, right? Because everybody's kind of under one roof there. But we could really sit around the table and say, okay, what is this idea? How does it work and play out through television advertising? How does it play out through influencer and social media? How does it play out through PR? And it really all worked together so that we could create momentum that really drove impactful results throughout the entirety of the customer journey for our clients. And so what I'll say is I can generate all of the awareness in the world, right? I can get Kim Kardashian. She's just the default. I probably should come up with a better example, but I could get Kim Kardashian, Selena Gomez, any of them that have all these followers to be a face of a campaign. If there's no structure, if there's no support on, okay, what are we doing? What is the call to action? Okay, are people signing up for emails? What is that next email communication? What do we want people to do? How are we keeping them in the funnel? How are we getting it out through there? It doesn't matter, right? So I think just like anything else, PR is always its strongest when it's adequately supported by the rest of the marketing funnel. And when all of the hands and everybody's kind of working and talking together, that's really important, right? What is the drive through? If we're working with a celebrity, I think sometimes PR gets kind of just boiled down to, okay, well, we're going to use Pete Davidson. Right. How many times have we seen Super Bowl like Pete Davidson in these Super Bowl commercials over the past 2, 3, or 4 years, right? He's kind of become the stunt casting, I would say, where he's going to be in a Super Bowl commercial because people talk about him and there's a lot of awareness there, right? But what does that look like? Is he in the commercial? Do we have him for media interviews? Is he, let's go back to the gum example. Is he making the flavor of gum in his faces at retail, right? How does it work all together? And so PR is, again, always at its best when it's adequately supported across the board. So just a couple things on what makes a good partnership. I'm going to get into a couple case studies and I think we can move into the Q&A. But the best partners for PR as a PR agency are advertising partners, creative agencies, social agencies, influencer agencies that are aware of the symbiotic, are aware of the ecosystem, are aware of the role that public relations can play, and that they're willing to collaborate to maximize efforts, right? And it's really helpful for us when ad partners consult us on what makes something newsworthy. I think a lot of times, and again, not that we play the gatekeepers and that we want to, break. I understand a creative process, absolutely, and completely respect it. As you can see, again, like we can go back to my PowerPoint skills here. Creative, it's, we're good about staying in our lane. But I think when you consult the PR agency or the PR consultant or the person on the team, they're able to help just think about it from a 360 perspective and make sure that it is newsworthy and make sure that it's kind of hitting all the buckets that are needed for the media. We need to make sure that we have the right assets, right, that we're sharing to the media. We need to make sure that it's not, that some of the images that we're capturing are a lot more editorialized, right? And a lot more, less branded than something that would be in an ad. It's just helpful. And as I've said before, it's not just insert celebrity here. We do a lot of different things that we can really help to maintain reputation. Honestly, I would say, I think it's on the next slide, but, we do a lot of reputation vetting and management as well, just on talent. So that's helpful. But the three ways that I think that we most often partner when it comes to interagency teams or with advertising teams would be in your brand integrations, your celebrity partnerships, and then on the influencer side. Okay. So taking a look at partnership and influencer landscape, a couple things before we kind of get into the case studies here that we're always looking at, and that makes a really good integrated campaign across the entirety of the mix here, is when we're looking at influencers specifically. So we want to use 10 TikTokers to help share and create content and share about this new pretzel that's coming out. I guess I have a CPG background, or I'm hungry because I'm talking about food. But, it's important that there's a mix of different influencers, just like, the marketing funnel. I think sometimes we take a look and we're like, okay, well, this person has 100 million people, so we want to have 10 people. Well, a lot of time budget, obviously, I'm sure you guys understand, dictates who and how we can work with them. But you need to have a good mix. So if you're working with 5 influencers, yes, you need 1 or 2 that have really large audiences, but you also need 1 or 2 that have smaller audiences, but really high engagement, right? That are really kind of driving through to that end purchase. So people that are in the middle that kind of have a mix of both. So it's just important that when you're looking and you're creating your influencer campaigns, that you have a good mix of people, different sizes. Everybody does different, has different strengths and audiences specifically that you're looking at or looking to engage. So I do think that that's important. TikTok made me buy it. I'm sure everybody's aware of the power of TikTok, the power of purchasing on TikTok. TikTok's ushered in an entire new stage of social e-commerce. So I do think that it is really important when we're taking a look at that there's always a clip on what is the social e-commerce experience, no click out, purchasing on site, and what does that look like? We talked a little bit about the risk assessment for talent. So we'll go through. So some of the most successful relationships that we've had with advertising and creative agencies for these national partnerships, we've had an opportunity to weigh in on risk assessment. So we'll take a look at, it's not always just about who's the name, who's going to turn the head. We're going to go back all the way, the internet is forever now, right? So we're going to go back the whole way and look at, any issues that they've had in the past, any of the perceptions that have come in through, how do they conduct themselves in other interviews? We have a nice network of PR professionals that we've been working with for, since I've been in the industry. And so I know, for example, if there's a talent that maybe seems like he does a really great job, will refuse to do certain interviews day of, shows up late to events, isn't great to work with, has a challenging team, right? Those are all things that really matter a lot. And so we're able to kind of help identify risk assessment and go from there. We can also help to write morals clauses for your talent in case something happens. I think the Disney and the Nickelodeon kids are kind of some signs of that going through. But yeah, I mean, our nightmare is always if something, comes through and there's a scandal right before the campaign is going to launch. Like, what do we do? What are our out clauses? How does that work? White labeling budget. So we're really seeing that on influencers as well. So before, it used to be you pay the influencer and then, you always had the rights to kind of white label partner and boost that content over on the brand's page. Since the pandemic, we're seeing a really big increase on influencers asking for additional payment to white label. And so sometimes that even doubles the contract size. So if you're paying someone, $5,000 and you say, I want the right to white label this, to promote it, to boost it over on my side, that can double it. And they say, well, we want 10 plus then you have the white labeling budget. I think it's starting to cool down a little bit with talent. But that is something that we're seeing and so that we're accounting for. So when we're making our social strategies, when we're making our strategies with influencers, we're really trying to make sure that we're accounting for any additional costs or a higher ask when white labeling comes in. And my advice would also be for talent negotiations here, if you have an interest in white labeling, include it in the initial ask so that you don't get the whole way down the line and then throw it in and negotiations can fall apart because the money is so far off. Something that I hope I would get a cheer on here, I know everybody's on mute, be so polite, is that one piece of content cannot serve every purpose, right? So I think that's something that we really like to talk to our clients about, or we know when there's partnership and there's influencers here. Some content is going to be your social content, short, digestible. Some's going to be your hero piece. Some is going to be any and everything in between. And so when we're looking at partnership and influencers, that is why it's important to partner and discuss with the PR agencies and the PR team what they need for the media, because there are very specific specs, very specific details and outlines that we need that we'll be sending it through. So, but we also have our agency partners back when we're in our agency team meetings to help talk about, the need to make sure that the client's investing the budget as appropriate to make sure that they're capturing everything that they can so that they're make sure that they're shooting, overshooting, as I'm sure, again, obviously stuff that you guys already know. The other thing that I think is important when you're working with partnerships and influencers is to do a phased approach. So let's take the Super Bowl, for example, and I do have a Super Bowl example that's going to come up in a little bit, but it wasn't just that we dropped the ad on Super Bowl Sunday, right? A month before, we started doing a whole teaser campaign announcing the direction. Actually, we take it back a step further. We announced that our clients are just going to be participating in the Super Bowl. No information about the creative, right? No information about the talent, no information, but that they've returned. We know that the media is covering that, right? Like we've read the trends. So it's starting to shorten the awareness curve and have people start to understand, oh, okay, Miller Coors is coming back to the Super Bowl. Oh, it's their first time back in 3 years. Oh, that's great. I wonder. Then you do a teaser campaign, then you do the full spot, you do a lot of the follow-up. So it is important when you're looking at partnerships and influencers to do a phased approach, right? Does it make sense to have all of your TikTok influencers post on the same day? Or does it make sense to have one a day for 5 days and it helps to build momentum, right? There's not exactly a right answer, but I do think it is important that, there are so many different communications beats and stories that we can tell from a PR perspective that working with the PR team, they should be coming back with a phased approach of this is what phase 1, phase 2, and a sustaining phase looks like. It really helps to stretch your dollar. It really helps to get bang for your buck and just to continue to have the client in the news and extend the life cycle of programs. Okay. 3 examples, and then we're going to get into questions. So the first one, and these are all programs that we've worked on, Juniper's worked on, or I've worked on and led in the past. So we did a partnership with Kalahari Resorts and Conventions and the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So as a PR practitioner, we were trying to ideate and think through what would be a really big splash. No pun intended, it is a water park. What would be a really big splash for this organization? And how can we help them go from the regional chain of hotel and resorts that they are to a national, put them on the map nationally? And so we brainstormed the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So the PR team was like, there's nothing bigger than that. There's no bigger PR opportunity. And so we identified the right contact and kind of did our research on what is the process and how do we get in here. And we realized, obviously, that this is a really long process and it's very competitive. And so it was really exciting. This was at the time when I was with the integrated agency team, and we partnered directly with the creative team to ideate and work on a pitch for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade to talk about, what the float could look like, to talk about and tell the story, the video assets of the resort. It all worked together as we were building the reputation for this organization over the previous 6 years, that we finally felt like, here, you see that we were on the Today Show, you see we've done this, you see we have a national footprint. Once they got accepted, it was really exciting because we worked with the media buying side of the team. In addition to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and knowing we're in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, we need to make sure that the media buying team is buying the national ads where appropriate, right? We need to make sure that the web team has all of the updates and that the website can handle the load of people that are looking at it. The creative team designed the float that was here. And then on the PR side, we just tried to maximize the story. So we made the announcement that they were going to be in the parade, I think 6 months before the parade. We picked a day, we made a big announcement. We worked with the creative team to come up with a rendering, and then worked with the advertising teams and the creative teams to capture the process of the float building out. We invited media to come and look at the float and to get like behind the scenes sneak peeks, right? We shared all that content. We built it up. And then obviously, we worked with influencers. So we identified 20 Instagram influencers, mommy bloggers in the key markets where the key markets where the resorts were. And we sent them parade watching kits, right? And we sent them all sorts of goodies and free stays at the resort. We hosted parade watching parties at each of the resorts, right? We really found a way to make it incredibly holistic. So I think the numbers are here, and you can see a lot of the placements were here. I think the most personal one is this unearned piece here of Jimmy Fallon saying that the elephant float is his favorite so far this year, which again, I think sometimes, in advertising, as we're looking as a team, it'd be like, oh, it's a shame he didn't say, Kalahari or whatever. But, that's a genuine reaction. That's earned media. And there's enough of a correlation there within the context. That's something that we were really proud on from a brand integration perspective, that really relied on the entirety of the marketing team to really move the needle and make the impact for the clients. Okay, so a celeb partnership example that we have here. So last year, Juniper worked as part of the interagency team to help bring Planters Super Bowl commercial to life. And so what we ended up doing, so we were consulted, we were working with the advertising agencies here, and we were consulted on a list of potential celebrity talent. And so again, I say, is it Pete Davidson? Is it Hannibal Buress? So on and so forth. And so we took a look at it and we said, well, we know that Planters' core demographic right now, core users are Gen X males. And who would really resonate and where would it make sense? What would that talent look like? And so combined, we joined with the team, and it was Jeffrey Ross, who is the Roastmaster General himself. So it worked really great across the board. Jeff Ross also really indexes very high against Gen X. And so we worked with the team to help launch the Roast of Mr. Peanut. So again, the creative agency came up with, what this direction once we had it. But it was that Jeffrey Ross was going to come out and he was going to roast Mr. Peanut. Okay. And so we did a teaser campaign. There was a teaser asset. We announced Planters was going to be at the Super Bowl. Sent that through. And then we have the roast of Mr. Peanut, the long form version that was there. And we did the PR for it. So we did the PR for the teaser. We did the PR for the actual spot once it aired. There was a partnership between, I believe it was Tubi and Planters, that they were going to host the entire roast for free. Again, that was the media buying team that really locked that in. The social media team had Mr. Peanut roasting people on social media during the game. And so over the course of the time, you can see a lot of the earned media headlines here, but on the roast of Mr. Peanut, and just kind of some of the earned coverage. But it takes an entire team, obviously, to do the Super Bowl spot. But that's one where a celeb partnership really makes sense, right? Okay, hold on. Okay, and then finally, influencers. So we worked with a client, we did this last summer. It's called Pre-Beef. And Pre has very specific distribution. They have grown their distribution since last summer, but they were engaging in public relations for the first time. And they really wanted to find a way to really kind of help raise awareness in the key markets in which they could find the product. So at this point in time, now it's a little bit different now, but at this time last year, does a Food Network magazine or a Bon Appetit placement really help when there was such limited distribution? So we kind of took a look and we thought, what could we do that are coming here? And how can we kind of help boost them? So we partnered with an influencer named Martita Yara. I think she was on I Want to Be the Next Food Network star maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So she's not a household name. She doesn't have a huge following. But we know that she has an authority in cooking and she has an authority in entertaining. And most importantly, that she was bilingual as well, because we know that there are a lot of markets that Pre is available in where there's a high demographic of Spanish speakers. And so we thought what we're going to do is we're going to rent out a studio in New York and we're going to do a satellite media tour. And so what this is it's basically a press junket where it's a 3-minute segment and the media dials in. So morning shows all across the country, you can see the little pinpoints here. So in Denver, in Kentucky, in Chicago, in Texas, and they get 3 minutes to kind of talk to Martita about, we did this for grilling in the summer, how to host a better for you barbecue. And it was perfect. We timed it for the beginning of June. And she went and she did this press junket across the course of 4 hours. We were able to book earned media. So this is all earned, but we were able to book earned media in some of their key markets. We booked earned media in New York because she was bilingual and Univision wanted it, right? We were able to book it in Miami and speak there. So I think what was so great about this is, it resulted in not just the broadcast placements that ran, but then a lot of the television studios are posting the broadcast placements then on their website. So, over the course of 4 hours, we ended up resulting throughout the summer, 47 placements. What we say is about 21 million impressions there. And we saw a lift in all of the markets. And because Pre was really smart and they started targeting their digital advertising when these segments were running, right? And so it was a coupon on Instacart, right? Then it was, additional retargeting. They were sending things out. And this really helped to move the needle for them. And again, we consider her a influencer because I don't know that the name recognition is really high, but she was perfect for this opportunity. So I think, the tail on this one is it doesn't have to always be your A-list celeb. It just has to be the right person and the right topic, right? So you can make any budget and any budget level work here. So we were really proud of this program as well. And then also able to kind of bring home these specific targeted markets against the demographic and earn that. Now, of course, there's the cost of setting up the cost of the talent and the cost of setting it up, but it was very cheap. I mean, you see, CPM on that's not bad from the PR perspective. I will say, the one thing that's fun is that it was originally going to be outdoors, and that was the day that New York City went green from all of the, or not green, orange from all of the wildfire smoke. So never a dull moment. We had to move it inside the day of, but that's a good example of how we can partner with influencers. Okay. I'm doing a time check. Oh, we're like pretty much here. I'm sorry, pretty much here on time. I think I see questions or, okay. What questions can I answer?
Hi, Sam. Thanks for that.
Hi. Yes.
So I have some questions on chat and then I have some that have been texted to me as well. So I can
Perfect.
ask a few of them. So with so much focus and emphasis on cultural sensitivity, I think that's like a really big and important thing here in Hawaii specifically. How do you address this when developing PR campaigns?
I think it's most important that people have a seat at the table, right? And so that you're really thinking through the action and not just the words. I would say particularly with Gen Z, it's not smoke and mirrors anymore. And it's not just the words, but it's the action. So people say, we have DEI or equal opportunity. And you'll see people come back and say, well, let me see your board, right? Let me see what your executive looks like. So I think it's important from a PR perspective that if we're making a claim of, we had a client very recently that says, we really want to go after and include, the Latina community in what we're doing. And our response was, well, do you have your materials translated in Spanish, right? Because you can say all that you want. So we really think through the authenticity, but you cannot underestimate the power of having people at the table in the audience, a variety of perspectives, to double check that.
And then there's a part 2 to that. So how do you ensure diverse representation within PR campaigns, including diverse voices?
Diverse voices within PR campaigns. So I think a lot of this is we can only promote like what the diversity within the organization looks like. So what we will do is and we actually did do this very recently, it's okay, well, we want to put these 3 leaders forth and they were 3, Caucasian men. And we come back and say, is there somebody else that we can take a look at? Not that we won't promote these 3, but is there somebody else that can speak to this? What about this story angle about, women in STEM? Is there anybody here in the organization that we could really put forward that would be a good candidate for women in STEM? So we try to think through what the story looks like, and then we try to guide and counsel our clients a little bit on just adding, again, not taking away anybody that they want to feature, but adding additional people that we could be able to feature.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So one question, some of the examples you shared are, a little bit more big budget clients, like the Calipari stuff, and anything really involving celebrities. So I guess especially, some of our clients don't have giant budgets. So do you have any examples to share or advice for, kind of getting some earned media for, I guess, smaller budget clients?
Sure. And I would say that last one for Pre with Marti Tiara, I think we executed that for $35,000 all in, right? So I think that some things can look really large scale and a lot of effort, but we can work with budgets. Again, I think it all comes down to your story. And I think an authentic story is always going to resonate more than, like I said, Pete Davidson, I can even tell you what his Super Bowl commercials have been for, right? And they're paying him millions of dollars. So I would say it's really looking at the trends and getting to the heart of the story, but you can't underestimate. If you find the reporters and you find the audience you want to tell, look at what they're writing about and try to craft the story to that. There's also really small pay to play, or kind of taking a look at, or I didn't mean pay to play, from an earned perspective. Community newspapers are great and they want to report on what's going on. Your patch organizations, your local newspapers, the community newspapers. So there's, again, no shortage of journalists, but I think finding ones that are within the budget there help. Giveaways are helpful, but I would say just knowing what the media trends are and how they're writing and what they're going to be writing about is really helpful. And the reactive, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. The reactive part of it's really important. Sign up for Quoted, QWOTED, which has a lot of reactive. Sign up for Haro, which is Help a Reporter Out. And you will get emails in your inbox every single day of reporters that are looking for resources. And there are a lot of opportunities in there.
Awesome. I also had a question here. How much of the PR space is partnering with influencers versus, traditional media channels? And where do you see the trend for influencers going in 2024 and maybe beyond?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I would say is I think that there's always a little bit of a tension between PR and kind of the social size of it. When I was working for Hershey in 2010, they would say, I would rather have somebody post something on, on Twitter and have somebody do that than have a Today Show segment. And I was kind of like, that's weird. You don't always want to put your eggs in one basket or the other basket. I think that there is a specific set of rules for influencers because there's money changing hands here. and you can put a little bit more metrics in it. It all depends. I feel like I'm a traditionalist. You cannot replicate a reputable media organization telling your story to their readers versus an influencer. I do think that influencers are oversaturated. I think they're asking for a lot of money. The trends that are important if you want to work with influencers now are long-term trends. So getting them in on contract and not just a one and done, okay, they're working with Hershey today, but they're going to be working with Mars tomorrow, right? Looking at these long-term crafted plans of, we want to sign you for a year. We want 2 posts a month for a year. This is the content we want. We want to have a non-compete. These are the people you can't work with, and so on and so forth. That's where the trend is going, because I do think that there's some oversaturation. And so authenticity is always going to shine through, whether it's from an influencer side or whether it's from a PR side. Does that answer the question? I hope so. Yeah.
Very much so. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. So I think we're over time a little bit.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I need to jump off. But for everyone on the call, I just wanted to remind everyone that the Pele Awards are coming up. So if you have not bought your tickets yet, go to peleawards.com. It's happening on May 4th at the Elks Lodge. And Sam, thank you so much for your knowledge and your guidance today. I know we all really appreciate this. And yeah, we're very lucky to have you speaking with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good luck. If there are any questions, Lindsay has my contact information, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.